Hello, and welcome to Crazy Movie Recaps. Today's recap is going to be a mystery horror film produced in 2022 titled Mr. Harrigan's Phone. A young man and an old man bond with one another through their iPhones, but when the old man passes away, they somehow can still communicate. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In the small town of Harlow, young Craig lives with his dad. They go to church together every Sunday, and Craig is often allowed to read the Bible to everyone as part of the service. It's during one of these meetings that antisocial billionaire Mr. Harrigan takes notice of Craig and later decides to pay him a visit to make a job offer. Since his eyes are failing, he wants to hire the boy to read books to him. Craig uses the opportunity to make some extra cash. Some of the books are advanced for his age, but Craig slowly learns to understand them and enjoys the philosophical discussions they bring to the table. He also enjoys looking around the fancy rooms in the mansion and Harrigan's collection of flowers, but there's a locked closet he isn't allowed to look into because, according to Harrigan, it's full of terrible secrets. The more time Craig spends with Harrigan, the more curious he becomes about the man's past. So one afternoon, he finally gives in and Googles him. It turns out Harrigan used to be a businessman known for being ruthless, who never got married, and he lives a very lonely life. 5 years pass, and while Craig becomes a teenager, his age has never stopped him from still coming to Harrigan's house 3 times a week to read, only having missed one day when he got the flu. When Craig gets home after some class, he asks his dad for a phone, but he's denied. The next time Craig goes to Harrigan's, he asks him if he ever encountered bullies or people that tried to take advantage of him at work. Harrigan explains he did, and he dealt with all of them harshly. A few months pass, and when Christmas comes, Craig gets 2 wonderful gifts. His dad finally gets him a phone, and Harrigan's lotto ticket earns him $3,000. Craig's first call is to Harrigan in order to thank him for the gift, and Harrigan explains it's just a little something he does for every person he calls a friend. Having a phone allows Craig to sit with the popular kids and connect with a cute girl he has a crush on. Getting new friends doesn't stop him from going to Harrigan's, and it prompts the old man to ask Craig why he keeps coming, even if he can have a social life now. Thus, Craig explains he doesn't come because of some sense of obligation, but he genuinely enjoys his time in Harrigan's company, which makes Harrigan cry. Craig convinces his dad to buy a phone for Harrigan. At first, the old man doesn't want it because he's afraid he would get addicted, but he quickly changes his mind when Craig shows him he can keep up with the stock market and the news in real time, instead of having to wait for the newspaper. From then on, during each visit, Craig would teach Harrigan new ways of using the phone before they jump into reading. This includes setting up a nickname, which is Pirate King, because the newspapers used to call him that. Craig begins worrying a bit when Harrigan starts needing an oxygen tank to sleep and wonders why Harrigan has chosen to live in such a small town away from more advanced care, prompting Harrigan to confess he wanted to live in a place where people don't ask things from him. In return, Craig explains he would love to move to the big city to become a screenwriter. Harrigan doesn't approve because there are always enemies getting in your way in that kind of business, and makes Craig promise that if he ever goes down that career road, he'll dispatch any enemies with haste and without any guilt. A few days later, Craig comes to the mansion while Edna is having her day off and lets himself in since Harrigan takes too long to open the door. Sadly, Harrigan has died on his chair, with his phone in his hand. Craig grabs the phone and discovers Harrigan had been about to call him. Crying, Craig calls his dad for help before honoring Harrigan's life with his favorite literary quote. When Craig makes it home at night, he's so tired he didn't realize he brought Harrigan's phone with him as well. As a final goodbye to his best friend, Craig sends a text to Harrigan's phone saying he'll miss their afternoons together. The day of the funeral, not many people attend, but Craig still reads a passage from the Bible and puts Harrigan's phone inside the suit they've put on the body. Harrigan is buried near Craig's mother. After the burial, Craig is given an envelope by the man in charge of Harrigan's finances with a letter from the old man, explaining what he's left him in his will. The most shocking part is a P.S. saying Harrigan will miss their afternoons together too, as if replying to Craig's text message. And while Craig wants to blame it on a coincidence, he can't stop thinking about it. Later, during a stormy night, he calls Harrigan's voicemail and leaves him a message thanking him for the gift, but also admitting he would give it back if he could have his friend again because he misses him. The next morning, Craig wakes up to find the creepiest message on his phone. Somehow, Harrigan has texted him back, although the reply is just a bunch of random letters. Freaking out, Craig asks his dad for help, but he explains this is probably a prankster that cloned the number. Craig visits the cemetery and calls Harrigan's phone only to freak out again when he hears the ringtone coming from his grave. Afterward, Craig goes to Harrigan's house and has tea with Edna, who confirms Harrigan left her and the gardener some money as well. Edna allows Craig to take something so he can remember Harrigan by, and Craig takes one of Harrigan's favorite flowers. Soon afterward, Harrigan's house goes up for sale, and Edna is allowed to stay meanwhile to take care of the place. Once he's feeling better, Craig goes back to school and actually enjoys his classes. Things get even better when Craig gets to attend the winter dance with his crush. But the perfect night is ruined when a bully, Kenny, shows up to beat Craig up, threatening to kill him if he ever tells anyone about this. Miss Hart finds him moments later, and she suspects Kenny did it, but Craig denies it because he wants to graduate without getting in any more trouble. When Craig gets home, he refuses to discuss what happened, prompting his dad to point out he needs to talk to someone instead of bottling his feelings up. Following this advice, Craig decides to call Harrington's phone and share his fears with the voicemail. The next morning, the whole town is shaken up by the latest news that Kenny has been found dead. Craig can't stop feeling overwhelmed with guilt when he sees Kenny's family grieving. He can't stop thinking about this the rest of the day, and it keeps him distracted during his lessons. So Miss Hart talks to him after class to comfort him, and reminds him not to blame himself. Since she's always been so understanding, Craig brings up the subject of ghosts, but Miss Hart doesn't want to talk about it. Later that day, Craig visits the place where Harrington's old gardener used to live, and a neighbor explains to him that the man committed the unthinkable in his truck when it became impossible for him to get a new job after Harrington fired him. Craig's curiosity gets the better of him and makes him check the truck, only to get more upset when he finds a lotto ticket inside. In the evening, Craig calls Harrigan's phone to ask him to send him a signal if he truly had anything to do with Kenny's death, and as soon as he hangs up, his phone rings with Harrigan's number and receives another message that doesn't make sense. The following day, Craig shares what has been going on with the local priest under the seal of confession. But the priest agrees with Craig's dad and thinks someone cloned the phone number for a prank. Trying to make Craig feel less guilty, the priest shares the details of Kenny's death. He had been drinking heavily that night, and when he tried to sneak out of the house, he slipped and fell, meaning it was an accident. What the priest doesn't know, however, is that Kenny's mouth had been full of shoe polish. The priest advises Craig to rethink his obsessive relationship with his phone, and Craig does exactly that by going to the store and getting a new updated model. All the contacts are transferred to the new phone, and when Craig tries to call Harrigan this time, it doesn't work. So he assumes it's finally over. As soon as he arrives at his house, Craig throws the old phone in the trash, but he soon regrets it and puts it inside a box full of little memories that he hides in his closet. Later on, Craig graduates from high school and is accepted to a university in Boston. University life is great, but not a long time passes before tragedy strikes again. One night, he receives terrible news from his dad, saying Miss Hart died in a car accident caused by a drunkard called Dean. Devastated, Craig immediately goes home to attend Miss Hart's funeral and keep an eye on Dean's trial, which has the most disappointing of endings. The guy has had many arrests for driving while drunk in the past and didn't even have his license anymore, but he gets to avoid jail yet again by promising to do rehab time instead. This enrages Craig, who rushes back to his childhood bedroom, and once he finds his old phone in the box, he calls Harrington's number and leaves a message on the voicemail, asking for Dean's death. The call is made in a moment of blind fury, and after Craig calms down and goes back to his usual routine, he can't stop feeling guilty about what he did, constantly Googling Dean's name to be sure he's still fine. A few days later, Craig's fear becomes a reality when Dean's death appears in the newspaper, although the cause is still under investigation. Determined to find out the truth, Craig drives all the way to the rehab center and pretends to be a journalist to pay a nurse for some information. It's believed Dean did it to himself because he was found in the shower with half a bar of soap down his throat, and shampoo had been found in the autopsy that pointed to him having swallowed it to make the passage of the soap easier. What makes the incident extra disturbing is the fact that the soap was the same brand Miss Hart used, and the note Dean left behind was a quote from Harrigan's favorite song. As soon as the nurse finishes giving the details, Craig returns to his car and has a total breakdown over the fact that he's a murderer now. When he returns to his old house later, Craig finds another weird message from Harrigan and remembers that after his death, he finally took a look inside the secret closet and found the contents were just memories of Harrigan's childhood, especially his dead mother. Craig thinks Harrigan has always been as lonely as he is, and that's why he keeps trying to stay in touch. So he visits Harrigan's grave and wonders if those messages were Harrigan's way to tell Craig to stop. After thanking Harrigan for everything and apologizing to his mom, Craig runs to the town quarry, considering ending things for himself. Thankfully, he sees clarity before doing something stupid and throws his old phone into the river instead, allowing Harrigan to finally rest in peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.